it really is an honor to introduce Edward Frank from Community to Community, an organization that I've been involved with for, I don't know, close to a decade, I suppose, and the people with whom I've been working with for quite some time. And he's here to share an update on what I think is an emblematic development, because for the very first time in Washington State, we have an independent farm worker organization, farm worker union. And not only that, the makeup of this organization is, I say, unique. It is made up of indigenous people who have clawed their way to the negotiation table. And I think it's also emblematic because of the fact that behind the negotiations with Sakuma Brothers berry farm, where the negotiations are taking place, is the buyer, which is Driscoll's, the largest berry distributor in the world, and sources from farmers all along the West Coast, all the way down to Mexico and plenty of other places. And so, if these negotiations are successful, we hope they will be, this sets a precedent for all of the other suppliers for Driscoll's. And I think it's very important for us to understand that Driscoll's is the corporation behind this. Driscoll's has the clout to be able to enforce the type of agreements that the Familias Unidas por la Justicia are making with Sakuma Bros berry farm. So I won't take any more time from Edgar, and please come up and tell us what's happening now with the strike. Thank you. I'm sorry, with the negotiations.
All right, thank you, Eric. Well, thank you again for having us here. My name is Edgar Franks. I'm a worker organizer, civic engagement coordinator with community development based in Bellingham, Washington. Our organization, farm worker-led organization, you know the biography of Rosalinda and many of the leaders that have come out of community. We all come from families that are immigrant, farm workers, still work the land. My family, you know, we moved up to Washington in the 80s to work the fields in Skagit County, still working in the fields in Skagit County. So a lot of the issues that have transpired with Familias Unidas and farm worker organizing are very near and dear. That's why it was an honor for me to be part of the struggle for the last July 11th, 2013, when Familias Unidas, which was not yet a union back then, it was just a group of indigenous farm workers, 500 indigenous farm workers, Mixtecos and Triquis, from Guerrero and Oaxaca, many of whom can't speak Spanish, rose up and went out on strike, organized and, you know, demanded, you know, some of the basic things that we all take for granted when we're working, you know, decent housing for migrants, you know, livable wage, just treatment at work, just decent things, you know. Out of that, those initial strikes that happened in 2013, a union was formed, mostly because a lot of the established unions didn't want to support Familias Unidas, didn't have the capacity to support Familias at that time. So the workers took it upon themselves that the best way to get what they wanted in their demands was to form an independent union. So throughout that process, 2013, you know, Eric mentioned it, there was a movement, a big social movement that started happening in Skagit County, in the fields of Skagit County, which is one of the few remaining agricultural economies in the West Coast, not in the U.S. Farm workers now have a voice that represent them and to fight for justice. Through informational pickets against Driscoll and Sakuma Brothers, the workers were able to educate the public on the issues that were happening at Sakuma Brothers, you know, and at the agricultural system whole. They brought up a lot of different intersections, you know, environmental justice, racial justice, economic justice. So for us, we see the Sakuma, this whole movement from Familias Unidas, as a bigger than just labor. It encompasses the food system, it encompasses our society in whole, especially right now in the age that we're living with neoliberal capitalism taking over. You know, this is the workforce that is now living here in the United States, the immigrant, mostly indigenous now farm workers, especially up and down the West Coast in the United States. Familias Unidas represents the resistance against free trade agreements, the neoliberalization, the commodification of food, and also the exploitative conditions that have happened throughout the farm worker experience for generations. So we're seeing this as a shift into something new, hopefully something new. Sakuma, with Familias Unidas, September 12th, they were able to go to a secret ballot election. They were able to get 77% of the vote, and now are in the position to negotiate a contract that guarantees them just wage. They're going to negotiate something that's equitable with Sakuma Brothers, as far as fair wages, pension plan. As you know, Eric mentioned it earlier. Average lifespan of a farm worker is 50 years old. So pensions and retirement plans, health plans, you name it, is all up for negotiation. It's a pretty historic things from a community that's historically been marginalized, or many folks don't take them in consideration when we talk about food or the food system at whole. So right now, Familias Unidas has been able to organize themselves into a leadership position. Us at C2C, we follow the leadership of the folks that are actually on the front lines. So Familias Unidas in this leadership position in Washington State to start shifting the agricultural industry there. We had some big wins throughout the short history of Familias Unidas. Able to block H-2A applications. We were able to establish that piece rate workers are now entitled to paid rest breaks, 10-minute rest breaks, just like every other worker. So, just these little victories start accumulating, and now we're starting to see a shift in Washington State in the agriculture industry just by the mere presence of Familias Unidas. And now, hopefully, we're in a position where we can negotiate a historic contract, one that's led by the indigenous farm workers, and start having these deeper conversations how we actually transform our economies into something that's more just in society as a whole. So thank you again for inviting us here and for giving us the space to share back some of this great news. And unfortunately, Ramon Torres, the president of Familias Unidas, was supposed to be here, but for the last 3 years he hasn't worked almost at all, and he actually is now working back in the fields. So now his full-time job is to work while they're transitioning into the negotiations. So he wants to send some of those words to you, that because of all the support from the consumers, from advocates, from activists and organizations and unions, we're at this point now where we're starting to see justice for farm workers in Washington State. Thank you.